Okay. Hmm. All right. I have no idea why I can't just pull this up, but it says I'm broadcasting. Oh, friggin' YouTube. Like, it should just be easy. Channel? Says I'm live. Okay. Oh, hey, there we go. And I have no idea how to actually see the chat. Why am I so bad at things? Oh, fuck it. I don't even care. Okay. Open the app. Okay. Okay. Oh, I can see the chat. Hello, Procelus. All right. I am officially on then. And I am just hoping that I also am audible and that the audio level is good compared to the... Okay. All right, well, I saw my message and I got a notification that there's a couple of people watching now, so that's all good. Okay, and I can be heard. So hello then, and welcome to the Angry GM's casual, crappy, critical Silksong stream. And I'm calling it that so that I set exactly the expectations that I intend to set, which is to say that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to play the game and I am going to talk about my thoughts about the game and its design and how it's put together and what I think about it and all of that. But I'm also probably going to play it very badly, partly because I'm not a master of the game by any stretch, and partly because I'm actually really bad at streaming and I'm really bad at talking while I play games. So this is not going to be one of those amazing, amazing, like Steel Soul, no damage, hitless, tools only, don't touch the floor type uh, type experiences. But instead, it is just going to be like you're sitting on the couch watching someone who's kind of okay at Silksong but has a lot to say about it. Couple of things I do need to establish is first, I have not actually finished the game yet, which has become a bit of a running joke among some members of my community because I keep getting very close to finishing it and then restarting from scratch for reasons that will probably come up later on in the stream. But I am about an hour into the game's super secret third act and at about 92% completion. I am still at this point avoiding spoilers and walkthroughs and looking anything up at all because I like to have a pure experience. So if you know anything about Silksong and there's something I missed, please don't ruin it for me in the chat. Especially because, like, last night, I just discovered a boss at, like, the halfway point that I completely had missed the first time through. My playthrough is, I'm going to try and play this the way I played it the first time, because I'm very interested in talking about how the game is designed and the new player experience. And I'm going to reveal everything that I have found and I have discovered, except for one or two things which sort of I accidentally got through osmosis. And I will talk about when I deviate from that plan. Okay, so that's the game plan. That's just my intentions for the stream. I'm not sure I will stream the entire game all the way through, but we'll probably do this for the next couple of weeks anyway, on Monday nights at this time on this channel. I do want to mention before I hit start game and let it go that I am judging Silksong here as a Metroidvania game, first and foremost. Okay. I love Hollow Knight. It is actually one of my favorite games of all time. I have put more time into Hollow Knight than any other video game ever in my life. But I love it as a Metroidvania game, not as a Souls-like. Even though I do like Souls-likes, and I like my Dark Souls, and I like my Bloodborns, and I like my Demon Souls also. But Metroidvania and the scenario design, level design, map design, all of that shit, that is my jam. And Hollow Knight was a master of that. It was a pinnacle of Metroidvania design. And unfortunately, I like Silksong a lot, but it is not any of that. It leaned much more heavily into the Souls-like crap. Sorry, I don't mean to say crap. I do kind of mean to say crap. It's par for the course. It does lean much more heavily into the Souls-like stuff. It is also janky AF when it comes to the Metroidvania design and progression and stuff. And it can get away with it because Hollow Knight taught everyone how Silksong works. And I'm going to talk about all of that. I'm probably going to sound pretty critical as I talk about its level design, the game progression, the world design, and all of that stuff. And I will also talk about the mechanics too, and I will have some controversial opinions that are good, and I also have some controversial opinions that are bad. But that's it. That establishes all the ground rules. That is my intentions. So let's go ahead and just get started. I'm also going to, well, last thing, I'm going to assume that everybody watching this has at least some familiarity with Hollow Knight and knows what Silksong is. I'm not going to try to explain everything, but I am going to point out some of the things, the secret design things that the game does, and some of the stuff it doesn't do. And you can see here's my playthrough. And my second playthrough, which is, I think that's actually playthroughs. This is 13 and 14. 14 started as me practicing for how I was going to do the stream, and it kind of snowballed. But anyway, I'm going to use slot 4 here for this, and we're just going to play in classic mode like a normal gamer because I'm a normal human gamer. I didn't do the Pantheon in Hollow Knight. I've never done a Steel Soul run. I don't even think I beat Nightmare King Grim or did the Path of Pain. But now we start with the traditional poem. I say traditional like there have been so many of these games. Honestly, there is a lot in this game that is very similar to The Force Awakens to Star Wars, Episode 4. Like, if you look at the Hollow Knight and Silksong, there's a lot of things where it just does exactly the same thing under the hood. And I always have that old school, the old school streamer from like the Something Awful days where you didn't talk over the cutscenes so that you let the viewer kind of have the experience. So I actually really love that opening. I like the setup of it, but it also assumes immediately that you're already familiar with Hornet and that you're coming in with a Hollow Knight mindset to begin with, because her character will not actually be established or explained in any way until some stuff just comes completely out of nowhere in Act 3. However, there is a very interesting thing that the game does right there with that title card where it says Act 1 Farloom. Which, brilliant name, by the way. It is a place where the weavers are that is far away. The distant place of weaving is Farloom. But saying Act 1 Farloom immediately sets up players from Hollow Knight to understand that this game is going to be structured differently. And of course, coming directly from Hollow Knight, you know there's a secret door or a secret passage right there where you start, and you can get some shards, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But there is actually another little secret up here, where if you whack this guy, he will then come and immediately kill you. Like, I could jump up, like, when he calms down again, I could jump up there and kill him, but let's just, start playing the game. So, right off the bat, it starts in a very similar way to Hollow Knight, where we have like the opening tutorial area where you can get familiar with Hornet's moveset. And while her moveset is very similar to Hollow Knight, it is also a little bit different. And one of the biggest changes is the downward attack, that downward diagonal dash, which is a lot of people have had a lot to say about it, mostly bad, because it is tough to deal with. And the reason it's tough to deal with, there's actually two things that make it tough to deal with. One is that as soon as you hit with it, you immediately get this vertical flip off of it. Also, there's a secret tunnel under the water. But so one is that you get this weird vertical flip that sort of changes your momentum. Another is that the hitbox on it is actually very narrow, where the knight's downward attack was this, it was like a scything slash. So basically the entire bottom of his hitbox became the hitbox for the attack. But the hitbox is actually, it's not as narrow as the animation suggests, but it is still the point of a spear. And you kind of have to hit there, and if you're a little off like you just saw, you're not going to land the hit. You're going to take damage. The third thing and it's kind of hard to notice, but I'll try to show it off here, is that if you go from entirely the top of your jump, the diagonal slash does not take you all the way to the ground, which means you can end up stalling out slightly above an enemy you're about to attack. Whoops. This is going great already. So you can end up stalling out slightly above an enemy that you're trying to attack, and then take a hit, especially if the enemy is on a lower plane than you, which comes up a lot with flying enemies, which the game absolutely loves. So those three things are things you have to get used to. I'm not saying they're bad things, but they do make the diagonal slash really difficult to get used to. This is a thing that happens a few times through the introduction and then doesn't really happen again throughout the entire game. Hornet is just something. And you know what? I'm not even sure if I know what the hell this actually is. I don't know if it's the abyss in her coming out because Hornet is abyss. Fight me, everyone, on that. But, or if it's the silk trying to be haunting her, or just the weakness from being in a cage, being in the rune cage, because the cage was runed to contain her power or some shit like that. So she gets a little sicky a couple of times, and then it just sort of stops happening for a very long time. A little bit ago, I picked up a mossberry, and that's something that I want to comment on the game being a little clumsy with here, is that the game throws a lot of shit at you. Like, we're picking up these little... Yeah, the abyss is the same... oh, damn it. I looked... I walked into the pit looking at the chat. Yes, the abyss is the same thing that fuels the night, kind of. I'm gonna be disdainful of lore hounds and pretend I'm not a lore hound, but I do actually know the lore pretty well. But one thing I want to... So, the game throws a lot of collectible crap at you right now with almost no explanation. So we're collecting these bone shards. You have no idea what they are, and you will not know for quite some time what they are. Also, classic Metroidvania. Here's a weird door-like thing that we can't open yet. We'll need to remember that for later. But anyway, then you pick up that mossberry, and the mossberry is just a thing. There's actually another mossberry up here that if you're clever here, whoops, you can kind of diagonal pogo. Come on, guy. Oof, it's going to be like this, is it? There we go. Okay, where we can pick up another mossberry. What is it? Who the hell knows? Okay, the bone shards or the shell shards or whatever the hell the shards are especially egregious because you don't know for a long time what they are, and they will eventually represent a mechanic that you hate. But the first thing you use them for is not actually what their purpose is. Also, if we drop down here, we can find this little secret. And this is another thing that we can just pick up. Which we can pick up in a second. Which is in this treasure chest, rosaries. And this is another thing. So maybe you were thinking that the bone shards are currency, but now we have these rosaries, which is another different kind of currency or something. Who knows? Who knows? We're on a journey of discovery. All right. One thing I do want to call out, though, about this area, and this is actually a really, really good design about this little tutorial area. And you know what? I don't have to actually kill every damn thing in the game. Only the things that are in the way. Did I go over here? Oh, yes, I did, because that's where I fell into the pit because someone talked to me. Yeah, right. So, if you kind of are paying attention to the map, which it can be hard because we don't have a map of this area yet, which is another mechanic that is basically just photocopied from Hollow Knight, which isn't bad because it was a very good mechanic. But the layout of this area zigzags back and forth on either side of this crevice that was the crevice that Silksong fell down in the introduction. This actually is a microcosm for the entirety of Act 1. You'll gradually see that the critical path through Act 1 is a switchback path that goes first all the way to the right, then back to the left, then to the right again, and crisscrosses a chasm while also ascending. Okay. It's actually very well done. Now we have our first boss fight here, which I am going to completely look like an idiot doing, even though there is absolutely no reason to screw this up. Okay, she does these things. She does the swoopy attack, which you can take advantage of with your... It's because I'm talking. She slams into the ceiling and sometimes makes rocks appear. And sometimes she slams into the ceiling and makes the cucumbers fall. That's it. That's her 3 moves. That was more what I'm supposed to be doing. See, this is what happens. Like, I will have occasional moments like that where it's like, Angry looks like he knows how to play this game. Did you see the way he was able to pogo bounce across the different things and get like 3 hits on her and take out the cucumber? And then I just completely blunder into the enemies. So one of the things I want to say about her, though, is in the original Hollow Knight, they did not include a boss in the tutorial area. Oh, something else. Those little, like, weird white moths that occasionally fly away that keep leading you upwards. Those are the same moth that landed on the rune cage and broke its magic. Okay, and then we meet our first NPC. Standing in for Elderbug. I'm not going to read the dialogue and do the voice acting thing. You can read it while it's on the screen. I'll let it sit long enough for people to read it. But there is a drinking game in this. Every time someone says to Hornet, I can tell just by looking at you how awesome a badass you are. Take a shot. Because every NPC in this game that isn't a complete dick says, I can tell just by looking at you, you're the most awesome badass that ever badassed awesomely. That said, I have been very hard on the characterization of Hornet throughout the game because I have been a little bit unkind about the dialogue and I have opinions on it, but it is not nearly as bad as I have joked about. But this is another new addition to the game from Hollow Knight, which is I mean, Hollow Knight did put objectives on the map for certain important things, but you actually do have a quest screen in your journal or in your menu. There you go. So of course she's saying it's a little frail, so that doesn't count as a drink yet. But now if we talk to her a third time, she'll say, you must be special. Right? Oh, I can see it now. Of course, that focus. Do they realize who they stared? It's them who should be worried, huh? Because you're such an awesome badass. I don't, like, here's the thing. I'm not really in this for the dialogue, so I will show all the dialogue, but I'm not going to comment on it. This is the top of that pit that goes all the way down. Like, if we fall down this, we're all the way back at the start. But anyway, I did want to comment a little bit on the boss fight. But we'll get back to that. Here's the obligatory starting town. And basically the rule is you talk to every NPC until they repeat themselves. That's fine. Did everybody hear that? She just said that's fine. Yeah, me no. Oops, I'm skipping the text. You friggin' text. Yeah, we'll know what the Belvanes are in a second. Okay. Yeah, blah blah blah. People talk. We're pilgrims. We want to make our way to the Holy Land and the city at the top, or the citadel at the top. This is the shopkeeper. She explains to you that she will sell you stuff for rosaries, the beads of prayer, and here is your starting shop with a bunch of stuff you cannot even begin to afford yet. And this guy, and this is actually a smart move too. So this is Flick, and he's telling you, I'm building a quest board. And eventually, when it is done, people will put quests on it. And you should come back then and see if there's anything on the quest board, which sets you up to return to town. And I don't know why I need to go back and save. All right. And then that's it. That's it. We got shop, future quest board, random person, nothing up here yet. And then we move into the game proper. And this is a spot where I now have a lot to say. Okay? This is the game's first inartful handling of the Metroidvania genre. Because what we can do here is we can either continue to the right, which is sort of staked out as the path forward, or we can jump up here. And if we jump up here, which is a normal impulse in a Metroidvania game, is to go off the critical path because you want to explore the area before you move forward. Okay, if we do that, we will absolutely miss this NPC and this gate, which, now the NPC is adorable and we'll meet her later again and again and again. She's like the most likable character in the whole game, to be totally honest. And she doesn't fit the tone at all because she is optimistic and does not lose hope through the entire game unless she does at the very end of like the last act. But this is actually a really important thing that all Metroidvania games do in some way. They get you to bump into an obstacle. They get you to bump into an obstacle that you then have to go off the path to work your way around. And they make sure that you see that obstacle because it tells you the single most important gameplay loop. And I can see people in the chat now, 2 people have already said, yeah, I didn't see her, or I almost missed her. And that is something that the designers of Hollow Knight did not allow you to do. They did not let you miss the first lesson. Okay. It's just a way where Silksong doesn't tutorialize the same way that Hollow Knight did. Another way, and while we're wandering through the area here and just fighting random shit, this guy, by the way, is obnoxious because he does 2 points of damage when he hits you. But anyway, the boss, the Moss Mother, it's a fairly fine boss. I actually kind of enjoy it. She's fun to fight, and having a boss in the tutorial area is an interesting change. This is another thing the game loves. The game loves to drop shit on you from the ceiling and take away your light. It's just a thing it likes to do. We'll have a lot to say about that in the future too. We'll also have a lot to say about the friggin' rosaries. But so in Hollow Knight, there were 2 bosses in the first area. One that you absolutely had to find, and one that you were very likely going to find. That would be the False Knight and the Gru's Mother. And by the time you reached both of them, you knew exactly what their movesets were. By the way, we are now locked in this room, and we have to fight waves of enemies before we can get out, which this is another thing that the game really loves to do. So by the time you got to the Gru's Mother and the False Knight in Hollow Knight, you had encountered their movesets already just by fighting the random critters in the environment. Like, you knew the Gru's Mother's erratic bouncing off the wall diagonal movement because you had encountered the baby Gruzes. You encountered the smashy guys. So, but there is nothing in the area that leads up to the Moss Mother to train you to fight her before you get in. And here's another thing. Okay, notice again, we can drop down here, and if we're not too attentive, if we had missed Sherma and the gate to begin with, We might not even notice that lever over there. We might say, oh, okay, I'm back down, I've continued on the path, and then keep walking this way, especially because your eyes are drawn to the rosaries, which are bright red against the gray. And you might not realize, oh, go hit. And there you have missed the most important lesson in a Metroidvania game. Sometimes the correct path is behind you, and then you open a path to move forward. Fortunately, Silksong is the sequel to Hollow Knight, and it can assume everybody has played Hollow Knight. And so it can get away with that shit. But this is already one of the reasons why I found it a little bit disappointing. Another thing to note with these rosaries, which are actually the money. Rosaries are the money, is they're spherical. And look how far this asshole went. This is half the game here, is the rosaries, you knock them off a deposit or a string or whatever, and they go rolling absolutely friggin' everywhere. The decision to make them spherical and to give them so little friction is like the worst decision in this game, except for all the other worst decisions. It drives you friggin' crazy, and everybody who's played this game knows the pain of chasing rosaries, especially because if they so much as brush against a level hazard, like spikes, lava, a slightly rough patch of ground, they immediately disintegrate, even if you have the magic item that picks up the rosaries. So yeah, fuck the rosaries. That said, one of the things that I'm not going to complain about, and you probably just saw me because I just paid for a bench, right? And we're gonna play out this area a little bit. I'm gonna explore the screen before I walk off it, because that's how I play. That's how I played the first time, and I mentioned that I want to play the way I played. So we have this exit here, and it has this sign. So this definitely is drawing my attention. But anyway, while I explore the rest of the screen just to see what's what, the money thing. So I had to pay for that bench. And when the game was first launched, this, by the way, opens a shortcut, so now I can easily get back up in this direction. Which is something that Silksong actually does pretty well in a lot of places, the same way Hollow Knight did, with you opening shortcuts to get back to where you were, or navigating an obstacle and then opening a quicker path to bypass it in the future. But anyway, so you have to pay. I had to pay for the bench, and in this game you have to pay. I left the screen, and I don't want to because I wanted to follow that weird sign. Because I'm pretty sure. I guess it's good to talk. Wow, I'm talking about 10 different things right now. Let's slow it down here. Let's talk about the actual gameplay, and then we'll wait for a pause to talk more about the money thing. In general, players operate in two different modes of play. They either follow a goal or they explore. If you are following a goal, you will recognize this as the way forward. It actually isn't. In fact, I'll walk down it. It's blocked. We can't go any further, which again is standard Metroidvania fare. So we need to go around. Whereas if you are in exploration mode, you will follow anything other than the goal. Anything else that draws your attention. So you're following your own curiosity. So then this sign might pull you in this direction. You know, because it's obviously not progress, but it is a point of interest. So it is very unlikely that most players will go out that upper left entrance. And being aware of that makes it possible to design this game so that depending on the mode that the players are operating in, they'll follow the path you want them to follow. Hollow Knight was very, very good about that, and even designed the map system to take advantage of it. Silksong does it in spots and not so well in other spots, and we'll get back to that. But for right now, we have just met the Lost Flea, or the Flea Caravan, and he is asking us to find the fleas. So here's the interesting thing with the audio cue of Sherma's song. It does not kick in until after you have started walking over to the right a little bit. Grecian. So if you immediately jump up as I did, you do not hear Sherma's song. I actually checked that because I noticed that scene and I was curious. Or anyway, you know, yeah, the audio cue is nice, but there needed to be a much more obvious cue. Like really, as soon as you enter that screen, you should have seen Sherma walking ahead of you. So that, oh, there's an NPC walking to the right. So then she walks off screen, you follow her to the gate. That's exactly the trick that Hollow Knight pulled to get you moving in the right directions in Green Path by following Hornet, or trying to follow Hornet and failing to follow Hornet, depending on what it was doing. A simple little fix would have changed that spot. Anyway, so we're going to go back into exploration mode now. We see there's a gate we can't get through. And then we keep... I didn't talk about this before, but you can kind of see where these breakable walls are because there's cracks. They're a little hard to see, but if I put Hornet up against them, you can kind of see her coming through the cracks. Not all of them are super visible, and this game is insane with hidden paths and breakable walls and just invisible passages. These guys, by the way, you can't hit them when their spikes come out. Someone said, I was watching a, there we go, we just lost some rosaries into the pit. Friggin' rosaries, I swear. I was watching somebody was talking about something in the design of it, I think on YouTube. And they commented that Silksong is basically like Dark Souls if every note about the illusionary walls was actually true. Like Firewood would say, I just attack every wall. And I do that a lot too. In fact, because I do not have all the walls memorized, you'll probably see me doing it in spots where I'll just like bounce into anything that looks like a likely wall. Okay, and now we have an up and we have a down. And I am going to go down because I always go against the direction that I think is progress. And I just missed that platform. That was great. In my first play, those guys were such a giant pain in the ass I wouldn't even fight them. Especially because they do 2 masks of damage when they hit you. Which, coming right from Hollow Knight, feels really unfair. But I think also I made way too much of it. And I think a lot of people have made way too much of the 2 masks of damage. I actually do think, apart from some adjustments that needed to be made, and they have been made because the game is being patched constantly, apart from some things that needed adjusting and balancing, I don't think the 2 masks of damage approach is generally like the crime against humanity that it has been made out to be. It does sort of reduce your margin of error, and I will probably talk about that more in later boss fights, but you kind of get used to it after a while. The magnetite platforms, they crumble as soon as you step on them, and then reform after a moment. It's actually, so this area is interesting because it's introducing this first platforming gimmick, which is the magnetite platforms. We have a gate we can't get through. And it will later on introduce 2 more gimmicks all at once. Whereas it's really better to just introduce 1 gimmick at a time. Actually, there's a lot of gimmicks happening here. The game introduces a lot of gimmicks and then uses them in a number of different ways. I'm just reading the damn it. Just read it. Firewood mentioned, I'm surprised how early the two masks thing was introduced. All right. Let me offer my opinion of the two mask thing. Okay. It only feels the way it does because we played Hollow Knight. Okay, in Hollow Knight, the two masks of damage thing was a late game thing that said shit's real. It was only done. Oh, damn it! I didn't mean to jump off the screen. This, by the way, is the first screen, the one where we encountered Sherma way back. So this is our shortcut back up now. So again, we're opening shortcuts. If we died, which we're not planning to do, but if we died, it'd be very easy to get back here. Oh, and now we introduce Chakram. I haven't opened the menu yet either, and I didn't even comment on tools. I am doing a terrible job. I wasn't lying when I said this was going to be a crappy stream. So here's Chakram. It's not chakra, it's chakram. Chakram is a throwing ring. And why would he be named Chakra if he throws chakrams? His name is Chakram. Oh yeah, there you go. BC to 50. Wow, I can tell just by looking at you how awesome you are. You look young, but you look awesome. Chakram is the map seller, and this game uses the same gimmick as Hollow Knight, where you have to buy a map first, and then to get a map of the area, and then if you have a certain item, the maps will be updated as you explore, but only at benches. So this is what the map looks like. Actually, we'll go into the menu. So this is what the maps look like until they're updated. Okay, and in Hollow Knight, these were used. It's Chakram. Oh, Shalaka. I'll accept Shalaka. You can also call him Pashenka. I rename everyone. Ask Kate. Kate knows I rename everyone. Okay. It is an interesting choice, though, to make the quill immediately purchasable in the same spot, rather than... And then your map updates immediately, so now we can see what we've explored. In Hollow Knight, you had to go back to town in order to get the map. And I guess it's time. Okay. Let's slow it down here. Let's take a little tour of the maps, to the menu screen, which I never ever did, because I'm now grabbing items. And I already commented on some of this stuff. Like, here's our shell shards, where we're told they're used for the crafting of tools and traps, which won't mean anything for a long time. And rosaries, which are our money, and there's the moss berries that we picked up, and that's Silksong's dress and Silksong's pouch for tools, which we will have nothing to put into for a while. And then we find these rosary strings, which are breakable items that have rosaries in them. They let you store extra currency, so we can pop them open for extra money. Here we have our tools menu. We'll talk about that when we get to a bench. Here's the quest log. This tracks our the major quest to get to the Great Citadel, and we're supposed to find 5 fleas, and then we have our map screen. Yes, Hornet's name is Silksong. Otherwise, why would the game be called Silksong? Okay, just like the original game, you played the Hollow Knight. Because... Next, you're going to be telling me that insipid child wasn't named Catnip Hungry Games. I feel like you don't understand how this works at all. I did like can we talk about Hornet's name for a second? She is the bastard offspring of a spider and a worm, WYRM. Who was raised by a bee and may also have and may also have some genetic material from an enchanted tree. So naturally, her name is Hornet. Okay, and then we'll buy bench pins. Here, we can buy a whole lot of shit. Honestly, my biggest weakness in the game is my insistence on always buying everything out. Okay, now here we have another interesting decision, and I'm going to hide the pins on the map so that we can look at this. Okay. We have a couple of different paths in front of us. One is blocked, one is up there, and the light shines. And then there is another path. Let's look down. Let's look before we drop. Oh, those things also, by the way, the reason I keep smashing those things is because they drop shards. And later in the game, whoring for shards is very important. And they are always situated to drop half their contents right in spikes or a hazard. So this is where the map kind of guides us a little bit, because it is suggesting that if we want to get into that gate where we can just see there's a bench there and we definitely want a bench, that the best thing to do is go to the left and then loop back around to the right before we go up. But everything's a little bit interconnected, and so the map's kind of not really helping us as much as it could. But my read on it is we're going to head to the left first. Okay. And this is where we first encounter the pilgrims. And you can see these pilgrims are haunted by the silk. It's called the haunting. Silk comes and gets them, and then they become evil, as opposed to all of the other creatures that are just evil by their nature. But the pilgrims are different because they carry beads. Because they're, I guess, sentient bugs, as opposed to all the other bugs that are just bugs. Oh, the game is reminding me now. Hey, by the way, you have a heal button, you know, stupid. So anyway. All right. There, I locked in a little bit. Okay. The game is pretty smart about where it places enemies and rosary deposits, because it makes sure to put them in places where you're either going to need the money very soon, or else you already need the money, and so you go collecting. Because we want to be able to buy all the shit that Chakra has to offer. Damn it, now I screwed it up. Chakram has to offer. And so it's nice that there's enemies here that offer money. And this is one of the reasons why I don't get too annoyed at the game for charging for everything, because it is very smart about its money placement. This is another one of those spots, though, where the Metroidvania thing is getting very murky. Because we see this sign here, it's pointing us to the right, and that is clearly pointing us toward progress. But this sign also reminds us of a sign back in the village. And if we go this way, we will see our path is blocked by spider webs. And trying to smash through the spider... They've obviously ensnared a boss. And we need to free that boss so that we can kill it, so we can go forward. But hacking at the spider webs just brings them back. So, obviously, we need to go the other way, because that's where we get the upgrade. But if you're doing the exploration thing, then you might not follow that sign first. You would, because you don't know the significance of that sign. Later on, you will learn to always follow that sign, even if you're in exploration mode. Who gives a shit? The story is indecipherable. The story is nonsense. I'm not even going to read that whole comment. Though I am going to warn you, since you seem to be very familiar with this game, that as I said in the opening, please don't ruin any secrets for me because I haven't actually finished the game yet. Anyway. So, it is very important to the Metroidvania experience that when you find an upgrade that allows you to make progress, that you can immediately think of some places to use it. All right. In my first playthrough, I dropped down here, so we're going to drop down here and see what we got. Okay, and this obviously brings us back around to this area. I should put on the compass. I also forgot I didn't even equip tools. I'm an idiot. I can't stream. Okay. It is very important when you find a progression upgrade, that you immediately can think of places to use it. Okay. In fact, that moment of recontextualization is the central experience to a Metroidvania game. The experience of being blocked by something and then finding the key that will open it, that will let you past it, and then thinking, I should go back to this place now that I have this tool, because I bet I can use this tool to bypass this obstacle, and then going to it is the central gameplay loop of the Metroidvania game. And it hinges on a Metroidvania game's ability to show you the gates before it shows you the keys, and to make the gates memorable enough that you will think of them once you have the key. And as I said, because I'm judging Silksong as a Metroidvania game, tools, thank you. You're reminding me that I just passed a bench without equipping any tools. Okay. Yeah, okay. It's fine. It's fine. I got it. Okay. Oh, here's another booby trap, where if we break these threads, spikes spring up. And now we can chase a bunch of rosaries. And I have to chase all the rosaries because I need to be able to buy everything. We got another cracked wall here. So we'll go chase all the rosaries. Let's see how far this shit goes. It's a nightmare. Because we made them roly-poly. And now we find our first spool thingy, which the menu will tell us is a spool fragment and will allow us to hold more silk, which we use to use our spells, like healing. And then this brings us back around up here to that distaff cradle, or that distaff crown. We'll talk about the sewing and looming terminology later, or weaving terminology. Anyway. And now here, this thing's a little pain in the ass too. Okay. As I came in, man, I do really suck at this, huh? My zoning is terrible. Okay, so there's a little bug buzzing around down here. And he actually has a... That was great. Because I'm going to insist on getting that too, even though I could come back later with a ranged item and do it. No lie, by the... Yeah, thanks, tools. Yeah, I know. I know, tools. Okay. Tools. Okay. Just like Hollow Knight, this game has a crest system. Except instead of having crests, it calls all of its crests tools, including things that are tools and things that are not tools. And so I object to that. Tools come in 3 different colors, although that's not super obvious right now. I'm going to equip the compass, even though I want to put the shard pendant on, because I think that would be more useful. But you will notice we also have this little thingy here, which is a crest, but we don't know that yet, which has a space for a red one and a space for a blue one and a space for a yellow one and a space for a white one, and then 3 blank spaces, and we don't know what those are yet. Okay, which is... It's ridiculously overcomplicated, honestly. It doesn't need to be like this. Okay? I'm not a stupid guy. It did kind of take me a little while to kind of get the whole colored tool bullshit. Especially when I found memory lockets. Okay. Fuck it. We're coming back with a ranged weapon. Here's the funny thing, and none of you are going to believe me. None of you are going to believe me, but I don't usually have to do this. Okay. As noted, I have been through the start of the game at least 15 times. And every one of those 15 times, because I noticed it on my first playthrough, I have gotten that little bug who is carrying an extra moss berry, and I have done the downward pogo, and even though I haven't managed to do like 3 pogos in a row every time and just knock him out in one shot, I have managed to get him in 1 or 2 climbs. Until now. So we'll just come back in a minute. Okay. I also keep killing all the everything because I want the rosaries. Because I am This is the thing. I have to buy everything in these games, and I suspect I'm not alone in that. I suspect most players who play these games, especially the first time they play, buy everything, particularly because you don't know what's useful or what's not until you've experimented with it. So even though the incidental rosary costs of benches and fast travel things and shit like that really doesn't bother me, especially now that they've balanced the prices a little better from what was initially launched, from the way it was initially launched, because all the prices for benches and shit was like twice as much. I got hung up on the wall there. Gathering enough money to buy everything is a bit of a beast. Okay. Now, if we look at the map, by the way, we probably will notice that this thing that we're here, and I'm pointing this out because it's important, and I can't hide Hornet, but there is a symbol on the map of this thing that we are near, which, by the way, is called a drop spindle. Which is the part of the loom that collects, the part of the spinning wheel that collects the spun thread. Okay, and it's got that distinct tapered bottom. Her mantling. I didn't even mention that you get mantling in this game, where you can mantle up onto you get like Samus's super grip. Enough now. Everybody chill. I just want your money. Okay. These drop spindles all are tombs for the weavers or memories of the weavers or some shit like that. Again, the actual story is nonsense. What they are is upgrades. So every time you see the drop spindle on the map, it immediately says, come here for an upgrade. And they are all marked on the maps. Okay. And now we've picked up the Silk Spear, which is one of the most odd progression items in the game. Okay. With the Silk Spear, which is a silk skill, it's a spell. we can slash through these silken walls. We can also attack enemies with it. It does about, as near as I could tell, it seems to do as much damage as about 3 shots from your nail. But I don't have that on good authority or anything. That seems to be what I've noticed. It's about 3 hits from the nail. It does have a very narrow hitbox, and it takes a little bit of warm-up, but it is really powerful. And then it lets us go over here, and just laughter and the strange mist draws us here. I don't know why I'm reading the text. I know what she says. Basically, she's another fetch quest. Can you gather 3 moss berries? And now we finally have a use for the moss berries. And it was smart of the game to let us find a moss berry before we got the quest, so we at least know what we're looking for. But it was weird to do it in the tutorial area so long ago. Okay, so she wants 3 moss berries. Also, and we already have 2 of them. Fuck. Is there a way to stop the game from updating? Because I really don't want it adding DLC right now. When is it coming? When is this DLC coming? Because I really don't need that nonsense right now. I hate DLC. Fucking DLC ruins everything. It's like, just make a game, and then make a new game. And now we have an 20... Oh, okay. Wait, 2026 could be 3 weeks from now. And I have to restart the game and play through... I don't care that it's free. That's not the problem there, Clippy. Anyway, I hate DLC. I freaking hate DLC. Alright, nah, I'm being a little ragey. I'm being hyperbolic for funsies. Honestly, I don't hate DLC that much. But I almost never engage with DLC in any game I play. Meanwhile, the Moss Druid, we did the berry thing, but we can still pick up more berries. If we talk to her, she will tell us. They have the Clippy icon. Shriek is cool has the Clippy icon, and I am friendly toward the Clippy movement, so I say that with respect. But nonetheless, you are still Clippy to me. Okay, and we get our first blue tool, which, as we take damage now, will accumulate silk in our little silk meter. Which, by the way, there's a silk meter in the upper left. That little spool fills up with silk. Every time we strike an enemy, we get 1 strand. It holds 9 strands at the start of the game. It costs 9 strands to heal, and it costs 3 strands to cast a spell. So, and using the silk using the silk spear as a spell. Okay. And now, because we... Okay. All right. Before I go on, I'm going to ask you to indulge me, and we'll chat a bit while we do this. I'm going back down to town to make some purchases. Okay. Should also point out that it has been an extremely interesting experience replaying the first 2/3 of this game over and over again for the last 2.5 months or whatever it's been, because they've been doing updates constantly and changing things. So every time I go back to something and do it for like the 10th time or whatever, it's like, wait a minute, was it always this way? Didn't Thorny Bitch's little minions do 2 damage or 1 damage, or who's doing what now? And so I have checked patch notes just to make sure I wasn't going insane. And now with our silk skill, we can wait for the little goblin enemy, and what he is carrying is actually a mossberry. And I think he comes back up. This is it. This is the rest of the stream for the next hour. Will be me just failing to hit that stupid little boogin. Because I want his berry. But his berry is like 150. So collecting the moss berries, you bring them back to the druid lady. And for each moss berry you bring her, she gives you like 150 or so rosaries, which is nothing to sneeze at when you're trying to buy everything in the game. But also, and then I hit the wrong button, but I did get a hit. So I can either do 2 more hits like this, or 1 silk spear. This, by the way, is where I show that I am just a bad streamer, because again, I insist on doing this. It's like I have to do it. I can't leave it incomplete. But it's terrible content. It's terrible content. Anyway, there are a total of some number of moss berries. Okay, I should have done silk skill. There are a total of something like 6 or so moss berries in the game, or 7. I think it's 6 or 7. I don't know. Maybe more. I'm saying that like I'm the authority on it. The reason I suspect I found them all is because when I brought her the last one, which is from a late game area, she said, okay, enough money, have an upgrade for your little druid tool. All right. Huzzah! It's friggin' waste. And the absolute first thing I am going to buy is the magnetite brooch, because this is the thing that sucks rosaries in. And then because I can afford it, we'll buy the craft metal. Even though we don't really know what it's for, we could read the... Yeah, excellent! 17th times the charm, right? So magnetite brooch attracts rosaries to you. And now we can take that little mossberry back to the druid priestess. the druid priestess, whatever the hell her name is. And she'll give us more money that we can use to buy more shit. Because this is really just buy shit the game. And then we can move on. Yeah, the platforming in this game gets mean. Not that I don't like it. The worst thing... So, what really drives me crazy the most about it is that I'm way better at it when I'm not being watched. I'm not great, and I still have really clumsy, stupid moments. But, like... I enjoy the platforming, and I've heard several people talk about parts of the game like, oh, this is the White Palace of whatever, and this is the White Palace of Silksong, and that's the White Palace of Silksong, and this is the White Palace of Silksong, and honestly, I don't know. Like, there is nothing in this game, including the ascent out of the abyss in Act 3, that I really felt compared to even getting through the normal white, just the base White Palace without doing the Path of Pain. And part of the reason I say that is because a lot of them I was able to do in a very small number of tries. Like, actually getting out of the abyss, I nailed it in one life. I died a few times, or I fell in lava or spikes and had to respawn. But I didn't actually lose a life getting out of the abyss. And Mount Fay, except for one section that gave me a little bit more trouble, and I'm kind of ruining future areas for listeners, but I absolutely loved Mount Fay because it was the sort of thing that if you locked in, it was possible to do in one try. I'm not saying I did it in one try. There were some missteps, but I felt like I absolutely could have. There was just flubs here and there. Mount Fay is absolutely awesome. I love Mount Fay. It is a fantastically designed platforming section. Anyway, so now we can move on. Okay. So the Bell Beast is a teleport beast. He buries underground, and then he comes out of the ground, and he does one of three things. Either he will pop up directly underneath where my chat pops up, making it hard for me to see him if he pops up on the right-hand side, and then charge across, or else he will jump. And when he jumps, he will yell right before he appears. Okay. Sometimes he will appear in the middle of the arena, and then he will launch a couple of bells, one in each direction, that will bounce high once. And I mean, you can see what he's doing. It's not... And then he does this to indicate now he's really, really pissed. We have a little earthquake. Bells fall. And I like this boss fight a lot. Whoops. But again, my objection to it is that nothing in the area really sets you up to know... Well, shit. I wasn't paying attention. He's not really tutorialized in his area. He does, however, teach an important lesson that I think... Oh, shit. I wasn't listening. I didn't hear him growl. Because you have to listen for... I have the audio turned down low. And you have to listen for his little growl to know whether he's going to do the jump or the dash. Okay. Because like most teleport bosses, he doesn't give you many opportunities to actually punish him. Oh, okay. Alright, that's good, because I really fucked up that last move, too. Which is something that is characteristic of a lot of Silksong bosses, where you do not get a lot of opportunities to deal multiple hits. You tend to have small openings to do one or two hits, which is more characteristic of Souls-like bosses than platformer bosses. Okay. That said, there is still like the stun, where like you can stagger enemies or stagger bosses. And then there's these weird dream sequences. Okay, so now we pick up an item that is not a progression item, which is okay because it turns out that the Silk Spear we just picked up is not actually a progression item too. I will discuss that in a moment. So we picked up something called the Silk Heart, and I did not understand for a while what the hell this thing was doing. Regain the power to regenerate silk within one shell. Isn't that already what I'm doing? Like every time I hit an enemy, I gather silk in my shell or whatever. Okay. What it does is it means you always have one strand minimum of silk. And if you empty your little silk meter, one strand will regenerate itself in a few seconds. This... Okay. All right. Meanwhile, we have the fast travel. So I'm not even going to talk more about the silk heart. Now we know what it does. Giving you the fast travel here and letting you go back to Bone Bottom is very clever, I think, because it leads you to go back to the town and check out the quest board, which now exists as a thing. Okay. And the quest board has two quests to offer us. Okay. One is give me 200 of those bone shard things, which, fine, we'll just turn that in. Because we still don't know what the hell bone shards are for. So maybe you think they're just a thing to turn in. Yes, I know the screen says that they're used to make tools, but what the hell does that even mean? I have tools. I've already equipped several of them. Okay. The other one is to go farm pilgrims. And it gives you rosaries as a reward. And at first I thought, well, this is kind of a lousy quest. This is World of Warcraft bullshit. And I am not particularly happy about it. But I then realized that it's actually very smart to give the player that quest now, especially because a thorough exploration has led you to a place where you can easily go back up to those pilgrims, and we're going to do that right now, and we're just going to quickly complete the quest. It does not take that long. But in addition to giving us a monetary reward, what that quest also leads us to do is farm some extra money. Especially because if we had a really unlucky run dealing with the Bell Beast and getting through it, then we might have... I forgot to take his little clothes off, because you have to take their little clothes off. Then we might be a little cash poor, and the game wants us not just to go back to town to see there's a quest board, but also wants us to go back to town and buy some shit from the merchant. Because part of this game's flow, especially later on in the second act, is a bit more open-worldy and quest-oriented-y. And so the gameplay loop of periodically going back and checking quest boards and going back to town when you have enough money to spend down your money or to bank it, those are actually important player skills. So giving you the fast travel station right then and there, and having set you up to want to go back to town because the quest board now exists, and then immediately giving you a quest that says, go farm these items and I'll give you money, and also you'll accidentally pick up more money, especially because you already know exactly where to complete it and it's really easy to get there. It's all very well done to show off Silksong's different kind of gameplay loop. Do I like the whole go back to town quest thing? Not as much. I'm not as much of an open world gamer, and I feel like Silksong has more of a feel of an open world game. And actually, if I wanted to compare it to anything, I would compare it to Igarashi's style of Metroid games, where they are, or Metroidvania games, I should say, or fuck it, Castlevania is what I'm trying to say. Koji Igarashi's particular style of making Metroidvania style Castlevania games, because he leans a lot less on the elements of Metroidvania design and a lot more on using things like quests and RPG elements in his game design. In fact, so there's a funny story, but the reason the term Metroidvania even exists is because Koji Igarashi started making weird... It is Koji Igarashi and not Keiji Inafune, right? Okay. Yeah, it's Koji Igarashi. Koji Igarashi actually started making weird Metroidvania games. It started when he was brought in partway through the development of Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation 1, and decided to change up the format, because before then, Castlevania games were basically linear, go to the right, kill the monsters, go to the right, kill the monsters, finish the level, move on to the next level, right? And he changed it to more of an open world Metroid-type setup, and he continued to refine his particular brand of Castlevania game. And fans eventually said, you know what, we need a way to distinguish between traditional Castlevania games and the weird sort of open-worldy Castlevania games that Koji Igarashi is making. And so on a message board, someone said, well, we should call them Castlevanias and Metroidvanias. So originally the term Metroidvania was not to describe the genre, but rather to distinguish between Castlevania games of the old style and Castlevania games of the new style. When Metroidvania became the name of the genre, then Koji Igarashi, because he's got a little bit of an ego on him, he came out in an interview and said, well, maybe then what we need is a term for my special Castlevania games, and we should call them Igavanias, which are Metroidvanias made in my style. So I was actually struck a lot by the similarities between Silksong with its more RPG elements. It is more like a Koji Igarashi style Castlevania game combined with an open world game. So it is like the Symphony of the Night of Metroidvanias combined with the Elden Ring of Souls-likes. And that structure becomes much more apparent in the second act, because there is a distinct structural difference between the first act and the second act. Okay. This is our first Bell Shrine. We continue to encounter these throughout our journey. And eventually we learn that they're actually what we're traveling for. Okay. But notice also that we have only cleared half the map now. Okay. There's a definite split between the left and the right-hand side of the map, and opening progress has let us now move to the right-hand side of the map, and we can continue our exploration here. And we can open yet another shortcut. And then because now we're looking at the map, it's saying, okay, there's a left side and a right side. Right side is progress. So we're going to go and see what's up. Hey, little hover bug, what's up? Oops. Yeah, see, there was one of those wall hits, like, wait a minute, is there a secret-y there? But there isn't. Okay, so now we have this big old room. Okay. So the first act in this game, as you continue through it, oops, is actually very linear, though we are going to hit a branch in a moment that is going to... it's something that I really struggled with what to do about. Really hate those guys. And I still haven't quite killed my habit of I have to kill everything on the screen, even if it's not actually anywhere near a threat to me. That was good. At least he didn't hit me. I find it very difficult to use the Silk Spear. Oh, the Silk Spear. Let's talk about the Silk Spear a bit while I navigate this room. let's not talk, because I'm just going to get myself killed. Okay, that's better. Let's talk. Damn it! Look down. Look down, see where you're falling. You know there's a platform. I'm treating myself like I have the position of every platform in the game memorized, which, by the way, all the evidence suggests otherwise. I have not once managed to drop blindly onto a platform since I started this. There's a platform right below me. Drop down. Oh, look, it's our first little flea rescue. There you go, flea. You're not as cute as the grubs. I don't care what anyone says. Okay. Silk Spear is a really weird ability, because nowhere in the entire rest of the game will you use Silk Spear to cut through webs the way you had to progress here. There are places in the future of the game where you will cut through webs. They do not require anything special to cut through them. And Silk Spear will never be used again for that purpose explicitly. So it's a very weird progression ability to open the game with, because it's not a progression ability. What it is your soul blast, or what the hell was it called? Like your soul shooter ability. The first spell you got in Hollow Knight, where you use it once to get you through, to progress past an obstacle, and never again use it like that, because from that point on, it's actually meant to be used as an attack. And I don't think there's anything wrong with basically copying the same format, which is obviously what they did there. But the issue is that... Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. That was stupid. I did that for money. And now I'm going to die. Unless I can get 2 thread and heal. I should talk about healing at some point. So I kind of understand why they did that. But by the same token, I don't think it was the right choice in this game, because the spells work differently. They're equipable. So eventually when we have more spells, we will not necessarily have Silk Spear equipped, which is why Silk Spear can't be a progression ability, because later in the game you can't guarantee the player will have it equipped. This room now introduces us 2 more gimmicks that we're going to see throughout the game. The first is these little glowy cinder things, where if you strike them, they explode and often open paths for you, and sometimes don't, and sometimes kill you. Okay. And this is a cool moment. That's a cool little oh shit moment. And what I like about it, compared to other oh shit moments where it's just a screw job, because this game will drop screw jobs on us later. But what I like about that moment is that it's slow enough to give you plenty of time to react. And it set you up to know it was coming, because you had to blow one of them up to get in there in the first place. Okay. The other thing are the bouncy dealies. Okay. Where if you do your downward strike on these little dealies, these little pods, you flip up off of them. And for some reason, Is the stream still up? Oh. That was very weird what just happened. I'm just checking. Okay. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay. For some reason, my PlayStation just suddenly decided to feed me all of the chat notifications from the entire chat. It is still going on. So, I don't know. Anyway, these bouncy dealies. The game will make use of these things throughout the entire rest of the game. Sometimes they'll be bouncy. Sometimes after you bounce on them, they will disintegrate. Sometimes they will explode. There's different rules for them, but every area has bouncy dealies. And you will be just encountering them forever. One of the tricky issues with them, especially when you're using the diagonal strike, which, spoiler alert, you do have the option to change your moveset later in the game. But for now, you're stuck with the pogo. And it is actually, you have to line yourself up on basically a 45-degree angle to hit them. And while the hitbox is a little bit forgiving, it is kind of tight. And visually speaking, people have trouble aligning things on angles. It is actually a lot easier to tell if you are directly above something or horizontally aligned with it than to tell whether or not you are at a specific angle, especially if there's a height difference between them. And one of the trickiest things you can have to do is go downward. Going up isn't bad, but going down gets really hard. And now we face a choice. Oh, no, we don't. Now we face a room that just has some money in it. Now we face a choice. A choice that has, I am fairly sure, driven more people away from Silksong than the Capra Demon drove from Dark Souls. The Capra Demon and the Graveyard combined have driven from Dark Souls. And people who've played this game know what I'm talking about. Okay? We're about to go through, to have the opportunity to enter a new area. And I'm going to tell you about my first experience here because here is what happened. So I encounter big old beefy ant here, right? And I immediately I hate that jump move is the worst, right? So that's basically, imagine that same thing, but I didn't manage to land more than 2 hits. And then that's it. I'm just dead. Back to the bench. Let's try it again. Okay. So I encounter this guy, and it went pretty much like that. And then I make my way back, and, you know, because it's now a corpse run, now I'm being a little bit more impatient, but I'm also trying to be more careful. Because, by the way, every time you die, in case you don't know this, when you die, you leave a corpse behind. And your corpse contains all of your money that you had when you died. Also, the scrolling of all the chat is just blocked everything again. So that was helpful. But anyway, so you leave a corpse behind that has all your money, and later on it will also have ramifications for your silk bar. Okay. So here we go, and we're going to pick up the corpse. So now I walk in here, and the first thing I notice is that I'm not locked in. I can grab my corpse and run away. Then I look at my map, and I'm like, well, that's odd. Why is there no map? I had a map. And then I look at the map that I've been filling in of the marrow, and I figure out where I am, because I'm here, right? And I realized immediately, this dude is a beef gate to a side area, to an optional side area. This is friggin' Deep Nest. It's like the bottom of the Mantis Village. I figured that out. And so I threw myself at the dude a couple more times, and then I noped the hell out. And I'm glad I did, because there's something really mean-spirited about this. Okay? Here's the deal. You come out that exit, and, you know, that's the next passage. So if you're exploring thoroughly, that's where you get to. If you go one more level down and go into this next door, hey, here's a bench for you. So now the corpse run is a lot shorter. The other thing is there's this little guy here. And this is a whole separate story. So, okay, this little guy wants to be let out of jail. And there's a sparkle up there that's like, oh, there's an item to pick up. But I didn't buy the simple key back in town. And a friend of mine actually, she told me she did not even realize she could let this guy out. Okay, because what you actually do is you smash the gates. And the reason I concluded that is because when you stand at the door, there is no option to interact with it. So you don't need a key. But I can understand most people not figuring out that without the key, you can't get in there. Okay, and Bellbanger here also does 2 points of damage. So we let this dude out.
That's fine.
Yada, yada, yada. Talks. Okay. And then we get our first red tool. And red tools are very important because red tools are secondary weapons. Okay? And once we equip it, okay, you'd see it's got a count, by the way. We have 12 of these. Okay? So we can throw the little dart, and now we have a good ranged weapon. In addition, at the bench, it refills the red tool up to its capacity by consuming some of those bone shards that we've been carrying around. So if you walk just a little bit further and ignore the beefy ant, then... Oh, yeah, and the straight pin is actually a super effective weapon. But if we had ignored the beefy ant and just walked 5 feet further, then we would have a nearby checkpoint, a ranged weapon to deal with the fact that his melee reach is absolutely ridiculous. I'm still not smart enough to run under him when he jumps. So, and we still keep getting smashed. Okay. Here is the problem that everybody has had, and there's a reason why we're going to keep throwing ourselves at Beefy Ant, and I'm going to lock in a moment. Many players, and I know this for a fact because I've talked to a lot of Silksong players, many players did not realize this was optional. They thought this was progress. Okay? So, I'm going to lock in here. Because I don't want to do this 10 more times. Still not smart enough not to jump over, or to run under him when he jumps. Okay. Dealt with. Fuck him. So we're going to actually wander a little bit into this to see what the new player experience is like if you're not a sexy gaming genius and don't look at the subtle clues that tell you that this is a side area. And I'm going to stop at a particular point. By the way, Beefy Ant is extremely hard. Okay? That kill was me locking in because I practiced the hell out of that a bit, knowing I would want to do it tonight for the stream. Okay. This area, called the Hunter's March, now throws some pretty advanced platforming at you. Which also fuck. Which also takes a bit of practice. Here's another problem that I have, by the way. I am used to having a double jump and a mid-air dash, and I keep trying to hit like the float and the floatiness, and I keep trying to hit these things even though I don't have any of them. So I'm not completely stupid, just mostly stupid. Okay. This area, here's another example. These little groundy ants, by the way, if they are facing your direction and you are standing on the same horizontal plane as they are, they move faster, but as soon as you're off their plane, they slow down, which means if you jump over them, they change speed. Which, if you're not prepared for that... Okay. Which, if you're not prepared for it... damn it. Okay. Alright, he's coming back. He's gonna dig his way back up. They always do. Okay. Okay. Now you can see, like, these are now just basic enemies. This is just the basic shit that I am expected to deal with in this area. I didn't handle that particularly well. Okay. This area is, in fact, completely optional. And if you come in here as I did right now, you cannot even explore it fully. Okay. You need upgrades to get to anything useful. And worse still, as I will demonstrate in a little while, it also kind of breaks the deep docks critical... Fuck it. Every time I try to, like, talk. Okay. It kind of breaks the deep docks critical pathing. Okay. Plus, these enemies are really a pain in the ass to deal with, especially without any of your basic mobility upgrades that you will earn very shortly. Like, just having a dash alone... Uh-oh. Yeah, we're just getting a little out of the way there. Because I really, really don't want to die here. There we go. And I'm gonna nope out of this area at a very specific spot. Okay. Because now, as if all of that platforming shit and those new enemies and Beefy Ant himself was not enough, we now have locked into enemy gauntlet to deal with waves of these these ant assholes. And again, I am not going to make it look good. I should lock in. Now, the nice part is the Chakram comes in to help us, which doesn't stop us from getting killed, but we can actually kind of let him do most of the work if we want to. I really should top off my health. Okay. This gauntlet, even with Chakram helping you, is a real bitch, honestly. Okay. And if you have trouble with it, it's honestly not a bad idea just to play keep away. Uh-oh. Heal, heal, heal. Until Chakram does most of it. This whole area... And then we can get the map of Hunter's March. Okay. After that point, though, things... No, they don't. I was going to say things kind of settle down here. They do a bit, but... Oh, this is the first time we see silk in its growing in the environment that we... Oh, I'm out of tools, too, huh? Okay. That's fine. The one nice thing about this area, if it can be said, is that it's a really good source of rosaries and shells. Grisian is mentioning Chakram didn't come and help because they came in the other way. So here's the interesting thing. As I mentioned in my first playthrough, I noped the hell out on Beefy Ant. I decided at Beefy Ant... Oh, I guess I should show these. Okay, hold on a second. I'll get back to that story. So it might be hard to see. There's this little pressure plate in the ground here where if you jump on it, it tries to kill you. See that? And then here's another one. They're really kind of hard to see. And if you jump over this one, there's another one right after it that is even harder to see. Because this is where the game is a dick. Hunter's March is where the game is a dick. It is where Team Cherry hates you. Okay, so now we have this interesting thing where we have this air current, and there's nothing we can do with it yet. There is an upgrade we can use to ride the whirlwind, but we don't have it yet. And it does keep us from exploring to the very tippy top of this area. But I am going to insist on getting up there too, because it is possible to do this. It's just horrible. Okay. And see, I was going to go to the right, but I see there's a sign for a bench, and I definitely want a bench to lock in my progress. So we're going to do it. So, bench. Because fuck you, that's why. And then it sits there glowing like, no, come sit on me. It's fine. Okay. This bench can be disabled with this lever. This is one of the meanest things this game does. Is it traps the checkpoints. Not all of them. It's like there's not a whole lot of tracked checkpoints. But one is too many. Once in interview, the designer, Miyazaki of From Software was asked why they never included bonfires that were traps or would hurt the player in any of the Dark Souls games. And he explained that the moment you do that, you lose the player's trust. They will never, ever trust another checkpoint again. And you can't have that. Checkpoints have to be the reward for victory, the place where you bank your progress, and ultimately just a safe thing that you never think twice about, that you will always just touch the checkpoint. Team Cherry didn't get that memo, and that is really inexcusable. Except, you all know the only reason I sat on that bench was to show you what it did. Okay? Because I never ever again fall for that bench. No matter how many, every time I replay this, I have never fallen for that bench. I always just disable the trap. Okay? It's something that only happens to every player one time, and mostly it's just for... It's the sort of thing that gets a good streamer reaction. And yeah, had that bench killed me, I was going all the way back to the marrow, and if I didn't know about the bench inside the little jail cell with the prison bug, I would be going all the way back to the Bell Shrine right after the Bell Beast. I would lose a lot of progress, and I would be furious. Okay, there is a secret passage here, by the way, because we check every wall. But we can't go anywhere because we can't jump far enough. Unless, I'm going to test something. No, okay. There are some spikes, that was not stupid. There are some spikes in the game you are allowed to pogo bounce off of. There are some hazards and spikes and things that you cannot pogo bounce off of. I was not sure if the red nasty bramble spikes were of the former or the latter, and now I know. So, we don't have anything to use the air jet. We don't have anything to get us across that jump. We can't go any further upward, even though the map will show us that there is more upward that we can't explore. And then if we go down to the bottom, which we'll now do, trying not to fall onto a hazard, and head this way, I'm going to pretend to be totally surprised by this. Oh my gosh, another trap. Yeah, now you're locked in, and if you don't get out immediately, the Spartan ant here will just whack you while you're in your little prison cell. Whoops. Whoops. Okay, I really hate those guys. They're really awful. Okay, so then we can come over this way and do some more pogo bouncy, and here's another air jet that we just can't go anywhere. Okay, we can come over here, break this cage, and get, what is it? Oh, it's a memory locket, which actually isn't bad. But that's it, okay? As far as Hunter's March, there are 3 further avenues for exploration that we just do not have the ability to explore. So going through all of that frustration has netted us a bunch of dead ends and ultimately would force us to go back if not for this door that brings us in the back door of the next area. And because I want to be able to talk about the critical pathing and progression design of each area, I am actually going to turn back here, and we're going to, other than opening that gate, we're going to pretend I didn't even come this way. And I'll tell you there are 2 points in the game where it's logical to come back here. Okay, actually there's 3. I will point out, as further evidence for the fact that you aren't expected to be here, apart from the fact that it's a dead end, there's nowhere to go if you come in here. Apart from that, the soundtrack listing for the music for the Hunter's March comes after Bellheart. And for the most part, the soundtrack listings are in the order of the game's basic progression. So even the soundtrack album is basically saying, you shouldn't be here right now. Okay. The problem is, and I think what Team Cherry wanted to do was they wanted people to get to Beefy Ant and try it and then decide, oh, Beefy Ant is, fuck me. Sorry. Beefy Ant is too hard, and I'm going to come back later and deal with him. Unless you were a badass. And if you were a badass and you were like, now you know what? I can beat Beefy Ant. Then, just like beating the Mantis Lords before you get the first nail upgrade, and getting into Deep Nest early and being able to do that and having that experience. Same thing here. The problem is it's very early in the game to do that to a player. Like, we've been playing for, what, less than 2 hours? Now, granted, new player, a completely new player would have taken longer to get to this point. But even so, it's still the first legitimate area of the game that offers you this branch off into this place that you're supposed to recognize as just too damn hard and turn back from. All right. I need to make sure that I get out of here safely, so I'm not going to fight every friggin' member of the ant army. Also, I keep forgetting I have ranged weapons, because I don't have the ranged weapon I want. Oh, I forgot they also throw ninja stars. These guys have more moves than you do. All right. So we're going to go back and pick up the progression where we were supposed to now. Okay. The other problem with that assumption that players will recognize this is too difficult is that by this point, the player has already fought 2 bosses, done some pretty challenging platforming, and has heard that this game is not only a difficult Souls-like game, but is also more difficult than the original, because that's the discourse. And so it is very unlikely that the player is actually going to say, I think the designers don't want me here until I feel I'm ready for it. Which is why it would have been prudent to do exactly what Hollow Knight did at the Mantis village. And because remember, the first time you die to the Mantis Lords, Quirrell shows up and says, hey, sometimes shit's too hard, and there are upgrades in the game. So, you know, maybe if you go upgrade your nail, then you'll feel ready to come back. I miscounted hits. I thought I had landed... Right? Yeah, it's the same thing with it's the same problem that the graveyard and the skeleton crypt had in Dark Souls 1, where because you have been primed to think this game is super difficult, the idea that you're running into a place that feels too hard is just like, well, I guess I just have to, you know, get good. And so it's very unlikely that players will just turn back recognizing that as recognizing that. Now, meanwhile, I am currently in the big room all the way in the lower right-hand corner, and now recognizing that I have filled in most of the map, and it is time to move on to a new area. I then come here just to check what's going on in this room, hit this button, there's a little car, and now I have connected the horizontal path straight across the bottom of the marrow, and I'm ready to move on. Okay. So what I would have done is just have Chakram standing at the entrance to Hunter's March, right before Beefy Ant, and have him be there singing his song and selling his map and saying, hey, I journeyed farther ahead, and, you know, there I encountered really powerful monsters, and, you know, it's, you know, sometimes in my journeys I found that I needed to go try a different path and come back. So if this place feels too difficult for you, though we can't suggest that there's anything that Hornet couldn't just handle, but if this place feels too difficult for you, you might want to consider exploring and then come back when you feel up to it, or when you've recovered more from your imprisonment or whatever. Not even talking about the little bell guys. And then that also sets up Chakram to appear to help you later, because Chakram doesn't actually appear to help you if you have gotten to a certain progression point. I didn't know until several attempts to get through the game later that Chakram even shows up, because I had never seen Chakram show up in that room. Because I kept skipping that area and saying, and I'll tell you when I come back to it. I'll tell you exactly when I would go back to it. Okay. Something else I want to comment here as we now move into our new area, the deep docks, is that some of these little breakables have these explodey cinders in them. These things drive me crazy, and I can't help but think that Team Cherry did it purposely to hurt me. Okay. Some Hollow Knight players, and I am one of them, obsessively smash all the little elements in the game. Cut down all the grass, break all the little shells, break everything. Just as I go. Like, you probably noticed it. As I'm walking along, I'm constantly swinging my weapon and cutting things down and cutting down curtains and breaking everything, because I gotta smash everything. Okay? And as you're moving along, if you're smashing everything here in the deep docks, those cinder things... Oh, we can hear Chakram, who's right there. Those cinder things keep popping and dropping explosions on you, and these things do damage to you. Because fuck you, that's why. Again, I'm not going to pretend that we care about the dialogue, but I am going to stop buying the markers for now, just so that I don't end up having to farm money later. I'll buy the maps, I'll buy the pins. Okay, and now we have the map of Deep Docks. And now I want to call attention to something else here with the map. Okay. Remember when I told you about these little drop spindle symbols? You know, the little pointed symbol that says upgrade. And over here was that gate, was the bench, and there's a gate that locks in. But we can guess if we go up from where we are, because we're here, if we go up from where we are, run over, and then we'll be able to loop back around and get an upgrade. Now that's great, but if we go up there right now and get the upgrade, we won't immediately know what to do with it. Because the game really wants us to check out this area first and find our progression blocked so that we go and get the upgrade. Okay. So showing the upgrade points on the map rather than showing points of interest, and the game sort of shows a point of interest here. It's like, oh, there's a something. That's what the game should be leading you towards. Is, hey, here's an interesting thing, and it should leave you to find the upgrade. So we're going to pretend that that's what the game did, and we're going to explore the lower half of the deep docks first. I don't want any of your other stuff. But we're also going to, because now we know what that chevron means, we're going to unlock a fast travel point with our little buddy Bell Beast. I purposely missed the platforms there. That wasn't just me being stupid. Okay. We are not, however, going to travel back to town just yet. Okay. Even though I said that the game kind of wants to set up this loop where you go back to town, check the quest board, buy some stuff, go back to town, check the quest board, and buy some stuff, I don't think it's actually very strongly established. And I don't think it's actually a good structure for the first act. I think there's, by the way, a hidden wall that I smashed through. One of the interesting things about the way Hollow Knight was designed was that the fast travel points were not planned as part of the game's basic progression. That is, they planned out the basic critical path of the game, and I'm just going to jump right into the fucking lava, because sure, why not? Yeah. I was too busy listening to what I was saying. Okay. So they didn't plan out the progression around the fast travel. Okay, they planned the progression, and then they found different ways to cut through the progression to offer little shortcuts here and there, and to give you the fast travel that you could use to get forward and back and stuff like that. But the critical path wasn't planned around fast travel. Whereas I think this game was actually planned with fast travel in mind. But that becomes much more evident in the second act. And I don't think it does the game very well, especially here. And I'm not particularly inclined to go back to town at this point because I've just entered a new area. And having the fast travel thing there, it's like, well, I can go back whenever. But for right now, I want to keep looking around. Okay. And there is a bench sign. And this is another weird thing because benches are a thing we always want to go toward, except I no longer trust benches. And here's progression. And here's a gate. And more of those moths or bugs, those floaty bugs that led me through the beginning of the game. And there is a lever up above the gate, but it is a jump up there. See, it almost blew me up. But there is a jump that is too far for me to make unless I have some kind of an upgrade. And that's like, okay, so I need to find an upgrade and come back. Okay. So there is a hidden wall here. Boop. And we're going to explore, like I said, we're going to explore the bottom of the deep docks. Now, deep docks is actually one of my low-key favorite areas, not because of its gameplay, but it does something really neat with the design that becomes evident later on. It's very well designed, but we've got 2 weeks before we're going to be able to talk about that. I don't know why there's a lore tablet, which basically establishes, hey, this was a place where they worked and they served the Citadel. Oh, and then we're locked into a gauntlet again. So the grounded guy, he's got this helmet that keeps him from being pogoed on, but it is fun to bounce off anyway. And I like to imagine that every time I do, it gives him this huge headache. And then there's that guy who, he reminds me of the Iron Knuckles from Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. I'm just going to keep jumping into him. Because of the way he uses his shield actively. Hey, let's take this a little bit more calmly. Okay. It's important to note that you can knock their cinders back at them. And actually, enemies that throw projectiles throughout the game, you can do that with. Yeah, again. I really did get all the way into the game's third act at 92% so far, okay? Okay. See, I'm also screwing this up because the trick to use with these little bell guys is they will always strike along the ground. So what you want to do is you want to jump and attack at the same time, and then you will go over their little strike every time. And then you can bounce off their heads, bounce over them, and hit them from behind. The little bell guys, you're supposed to watch their movements and watch whether they're jumping or charging. And if they're charging, use the pogo attack. And if they're jumping, you're supposed to move under them or move away from them, and then you can strike them because they're undefended. I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just sucking at it. Okay. Okay, so this is the first place we have where we can actually use our craft metal, because the Forge Daughter here charges us both money and craft metal to make some of our upgrades. I am first going to buy this magma bell, which I actually did because I looked at these 3 items. I wasn't really using tools, and I didn't realize the importance of tools this early on. I didn't really care about having another tool, but this thing protects against fire, and I'm in the lava and fire area. So I'm like, well, hell, I'm buying this thing first. But also, my general rule is buy everything before you leave an area. I will not actually be keeping to that. I won't force you guys to watch me grind for money. But I'm going to buy the sting shards as well. And then hopefully we'll have just enough money later to buy the other things so that we never have to come back and buy anything more. Okay. And this actually gives me the opportunity to, in addition to equipping the magma bell, use a memory locket. Okay. So I'm going to swap out my Druid's Eye for the Magma Bell. I don't really care about the Druid's Eye because I don't take that much damage. I couldn't say it. Okay. The Memory Locket allows us to unlock one of these extra equipment slots. And for whatever reason, on my first playthrough, I didn't pay very careful attention to the colors. I didn't realize there's one yellow, one blue, and one red. In fact, I assumed they were all red. I assumed that because this is associated with the up direction, this one will be associated with the down direction, and this one will be associated with left and right. But anyway, I was wrong, by the way. So we can now use our memory locket, and now we can equip a second tool. Okay, and I have the Magma Bell equipped. So the Magma Bell, you can now see it gives us a little icon in the upper left. And what it does is it will reduce one instance of fire or lava damage from 2 points down to 1 point. And, in addition, when we have to hot foot over some hot floors, it will be helpful there. These lava slugs are a giant pain in the ass because every time you hit them, they spew a huge area of lava. And if they're above you, that area... And sometimes, like if you just stand there and walk into them, then they'll damage you for that too. But, you know, only a moron does that. Okay. So we take a swipe and jump at the same time, and that guy never hits us with his little pitchfork. I know how to play. I'm just bad at it. Okay. This area shows off the little hot floors. Okay. We can walk on these hot floors, but if we're in contact with them for too long, they will do damage to us. And the Magma Bell gives us more time before they damage us. But also, it really doesn't matter because if you just keep hopping, you keep resetting the little timer. I just walked over there so that I could have the chance to maybe blow myself up. Okay. I actually suspect that this area, is easier, or you're meant to have the areas upgrade before you do this little challenge room. But it turns out to be completely unnecessary. And you don't even need the Magma Bell to do it, because like I said, if you just keep hopping, you'll never build up enough heat to take damage. So we climb up here, hit the lever. And this is a good example of what Hollow Knight did a lot, which was these little platform puzzle rooms that you would do a little platform puzzle, or a little platforming segment to get to an upgrade. And we just got our second spool fragment already, so now we have extra silk we can carry. And the well-designed ones always have a way to get you right back to the beginning, so you don't have to get back. The flea behind the fast travel point was the same way. I guess I should show off the little... So these little things, they set a trap. if an enemy comes into contact with the trap, it does what it just did, where it like explodes and it does like 5 hits. And if the trap is struck by a projectile or you attack it, it instead launches arrows in every direction, or nails or needles or pins or some shit. Anyway, I really like the Sting Shard, which is, I think, what it's called. It's one of my favorite tools for the early game. Okay. Okay. We're just gonna open with that. And then we're just gonna stand there and take an ember to the face. Because why not? I was highly critical of the healing and magic system when I first started playing. Because you have to have, at least when you start the game, you have to have 9 full strands of silk to do a heal. And your heal gets you back 3 damage. And the way I had played Hollow Knight is kind of the same way I play here, where I'm clumsy and impatient and stupid, and I make up for it by healing whenever I need to. And having a much more limited access to healing resources, as you do, because you need a full healing bar, or you need a full heal bar to heal, it made me really wary of using my silk for anything else. And so I was very critical, and I'm like, oh, the game just doesn't want me to use spells, and it's punishing me for using spells. But I kind of cooled on that attitude as I kept playing through the game, and found that, first of all, you build silk very quickly. Most of the enemies take 3 or 4 hits to beat. So just by hitting an enemy a couple of times, and the bosses take like 40 or 50 hits to beat. So just by whacking an enemy a few times, you can build up enough to cast a spell even before you start picking up silk hearts and charms that help you regenerate silk faster. And on top of that, honestly, I started to come to the opinion that I don't think most of the bosses in this game are actually harder than most of the bosses in Hollow Knight. And part of that may be that, having played Hollow Knight extensively, you're just good enough at this that the bosses are easier. Because I remember, taking forever to beat some of the bosses in Hollow Knight, where I was doing attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt. And I haven't really encountered anything that took like a whole weekend, where I was like stuck for 20 attempts or 30 attempts. But I did find that a lot of the bosses in the game were frustrating me. And after some balance corrections, I actually discovered that some of the bosses that frustrated me most were bosses I really enjoyed fighting once certain aspects of their balance were changed. And so what I think is actually happening, and I'll talk about this with some of the future bosses, but Silksong's has some really good fun bosses. And it also has some very, very frustrating bosses. And I don't think the bosses are frustrating for very good reasons. I think that the high damage, the lack of windows to attack in, the difficulty, like, Hornet's momentum is very difficult to get used to, because she's a creature that's constantly changing momentum. You do the pogo and then she's flipping. which sort of changes your in-air trajectory. And you do the dash, and then you do an attack. And when you dash into an attack, because I'm about to get the dash, and I'll show this, but you do the dash, and then you get the attack, and then do an attack, and then you do a little flip off the enemy, which you can chain into a pogo, or you can really chain attacks together into some really neat moves. Even if you suck like I do, you can occasionally get like a really good pogo string going, or pogo between several different enemies, and shit like that. But it takes a lot to learn the weird momentum. The game also expects you to use all of the things in your arsenal, like the tools and like your silk spells. I'm pausing for a second because I have a cat who wants to take up residence on my chest now. So you can sit. I just have to let her sit. Just settle down. We normally spend some game time sitting together, where she sits on my chest and makes it much more difficult for me to play. But anyway. Okay. So now we have another bench here as we're climbing our way toward the upgrade. Ultimately, I think until some balancing was done, especially around minions, a lot of the bosses aren't super hard, but there are a lot of aspects of the boss design in this game that, outside of the standout bosses, because there are certain bosses that absolutely stand out as awesome and that I definitely love, but outside of those standout bosses, there's a lot of bosses that just have a lot of friction points where it's just not really fun to master them. So even if it takes fewer attempts, it just feels suckier. And when you do finally... Yeah, I knew that was coming. And for an encore, we'll take the hit again. You know, I could just walk away from the ant. That's the funniest part, is I was past him, and I could just walk away now, but I didn't. Okay. This, by the way, is the other end of the Hunter's March gate. Okay, the gate that I opened, the place where I said nope. And you can see how that would interrupt the progression of the deep docks. Because now what it would do is it would put me basically where I'm about to get the area's upgrade. Before I had seen anything else about the area, before I had encountered the map, before I encountered the merchant, travel point, anything else, I'm already getting the prize so that I can go face the area's final boss. Okay, Biscuit, sweetie, if you're going to go, go. Okay. Okay. I have a cat adjusting. I'm really sorry. Okay. And so I feel like, again, coming through Hunter's March does a big disservice to an area that is pretty well designed, if a little bit unguided. Compared to other Metroidvania areas, the Hunter's, or the Deep Docks is a little bit, whoops. Could you stop? Damn it! Stop it! And no! Oh, I hate when you do that backwards. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. Okay. The Deep Docks is a very well-designed area, if a little bit open-ended-y from a Metroidvania perspective. It doesn't quite land the arty guided nonlinearity that areas in Hollow Knight hit, but it's pretty close, and it is a very well-designed area. And then setting up most new players to have this brutal challenge to accidentally come in from the back door. Damn it. To come in through the back door it's a baffling decision from the people who made Hollow Knight. I just don't get it. this leads us back. This would let us back through to the bench. So. Oh, and now the flying ants. The flying ants, by the way, I know I look like I'm stupid because I take hits from them constantly, but they are really erratic in their movement. And honestly, all of the flying enemies in this game are annoying as hell for one reason or another. Okay. But now we have found our way to the other side of the spindle, to the top of the spindle. Having correctly predicted how the map was going to loop us around because we looked at the map and read it. Yeah, I pointed that out, Grissian, that the difficulty of the enemies, the soldier ants, they take like 40 hits apiece. They take what, eight hits for the helmeted ones or something, and maybe 7 or 6 hits for the little ones, the skirmisher ants. And they have such an elaborate moveset that every one of them is a pretty serious duel. That was just another clue that you're in the wrong place. Plus, I'm going to say, so now I just picked up the speed boost, okay, which gives me a run button, which is pretty awesome in itself. The run button extends my jump distance, but also, if you just tap the speed boost, it becomes a dodge button, and in the air, it becomes a little final extension to your jump. For a one-button sprint button, it is actually extremely versatile. And I'll show you one more thing it gives you in a minute. So we could do it like that, where we can get a running start and then do a bunch of long-distance jumps. And then we can do it like I just did it, where you jump and then dash in the air. And you can actually even string the two of them together. Plus, there should be a guy down here. Plus, if you dash into an attack, you get a dashing stab, which you can then chain into a jump attack. Okay. Plus, this gives you a really good way to get out of the range of an enemy who has a long reach melee attack. Like, say, a certain beefy ant that has a very long range melee attack. His melee attack has a lot of reach, and you are not fast enough to get away from it, nor are you really fast enough to run under his frequent jumps. But once you have the dash, the beefy ant becomes a lot easier to deal with. I'm hoping I have the money for this now. I do. Excellent. Okay. So we'll buy the last upgrade, and then we never have to come visit Forge Daughter again. The crafting kit increases the damage of all of your red tools. Okay. And if you look at it, you can see there's a total of 4 upgrades in the game for tool damage. Later on, we will also find one that increases the number of red tools you can carry, the amount of ammo for your red tools. Okay. And with all of that set, we're at the end of this area, and I think after the end of this area, I'm going to call it a night. But it's been a good stream. I am not quite landing my... Oops. All my diagonal strikes are just a little bit off. So this is Lace. She's a little bit fancy duelist, right? And if you... The most important thing is that if you land an attack while she's got her blade up to guard... Oops. She will do that attack, and it will stun you and do an extra hit of damage. She also will not fall in the lava on her own, and it is possible to stun her and knock her into the lava, and if you do that, she just jumps out. And then in her late phase, second phase, whatever phase, damn it! She develops that teleport strike. Where if you're anywhere in that circle of damage, she will hit you, and I think she does 2 damage if she hits you there. Fuck! I panicked and jumped into the lava. Okay. We can recover this. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention the air heal, that you can stop in midair to heal. Okay, there we go. I was kind of worried. I was afraid I was going to have to make a second attempt and lock in instead of yammering through this fight. Alright, a couple of different things were said in the chat. I'm going to ring the bell, Paul, and get the checkpoint. And we're going to call it a night here. And I hope everybody enjoyed the stream. And I'm going to be back again next week, again Monday at this same time, doing this again. And we'll pick up where we left off. I did see a number of people comment about how much they liked the lace fight. My problem with the lace fight is that as it's a good fight. It's a fun little duel. But through the whole fight, I was comparing it to fighting Hornet for the first time in Hollow Knight. And it just, I don't know, something about, I'll think about it. I will think about why the lace fight doesn't land for me. Because it didn't really land for me. Okay? It's not a bad fight. I do enjoy it. But it's just, it's not one of my favorites. I could take it or leave it. It feels pretty insubstantial. And even fighting her the second time, at toward the end of the game, like, yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about Lace more another time. I'm going to call it a night here, though. So I hope everybody had a good time. I hope I actually had some interesting and insightful things to say to make up for the fact that half my gameplay was a hot mess. Though I don't think it was that bad. There were a couple of really bad moments. But I did take care of Beefy Ant pretty damn well. I took out Beefy Ant pretty effectively. All right. So everybody have a great night. Have a great week. Those of you who are my supporters in my Discord community, there is a Slap chat. Kate is saying I did better than her the first time through. Well, no, this is like my 17th time through. Okay? Like, I say that I'm trying to do this like the new player experience, but at the same time, there is no way I could claim that like I'm doing the new player experience, because the new player experience would have died to Lace 5 times first. It's like, but I know her moveset and I can almost control Hornet. And I can almost actually respond to the moveset. I know her moveset. I know what to do in response to each of her moves. I'm just clumsy and sometimes impatient. Impatience kills me more than anything else. Okay? My biggest weakness, and this is something that it took me a long time to figure out with this game. And there was a particular boss that did it. His name is Trobio. He's not He comes a long, long time later. Trobio is the boss that I finally realized that in Silksong, you cannot get greedy for hits. You can't just win damage races. Where you have to play, like, there is more Cuphead to it, or it's more Souls-like than the original Hollow Knight. Okay, where you have to pick your hits, and you have to accept the fact that most of the time you're just going to get, defend yourself, avoid the attacks, and then you're going to get one butt poke, and then do it all again. So, and it took me a long time to lock that in, and I still lose that habit a lot. Like fighting through Ant Village, I really wanted to kill all the ant soldiers quickly, and so I was just doing a lot of diagonal slashes and pogos, just quick attacks, and taking a lot more damage than I should have. Impatience really kills me. Also, I'm an old man with terrible reaction times and shit like that. So, anyway, it's been fun. Everybody have a good one. See you all next week for the stream, starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Daylight Time, ESRB. And tomorrow night, for those who are members of Club Slapdash, there will be a Slapdash in the Discord at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Daylight Time, ESRB. All right, take care. Have a good one.